I've got somebody else here who's rumbling. His name is Thomas Wasson. He's standing right over here. What's going on, my friend?
We're rumbling for some freight knowledge. Also burn-ins as well, speaking of which.
Hungry for the 411.
Exactly. And we had two recent articles, one by FreightWaves CEO and founder Craig Fuller, of course, and then JP Hampstead, one of our strategic advisors, talking about, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, he is.
Talking about what the heck is going on in terms of like this the contract market, the revenge of the shippers, the Empire Strikes Back trademark, and how a lot of folks, especially I really liked Craig's article, how they're going to be caught off guard. Trucking thought, oh, this is the new normal. And we forget that for the experienced truckers, it's a cyclical business cycle. So it's like we're on the roller coaster. We think it's going to keep going up and, oh, by the way, going down. So this is what we're talking about is what's going to happen. Now, it's when we talk about carriers, it's a tale of two cities, larger carriers versus smaller carriers, brokers versus, and so the important thing to note is that we know for sure that contract rates are going down, but the concern is that if it becomes a domino effect, because once one shipper realizes he gets 10% off, he'll talk to the next one and the next one. They'll go to conferences and the word gets out and then everyone loses money.
I agree, but it's more complicated. It's not. I don't know if it's more complicated, but there's another column here, and it's the carriers themselves. The most desperate or the stupidest person in the room sets the price. So once a carrier, because you can look at it this way, once a carrier realizes they lost out to that carrier, they come back and drop their price, and then they drop their price, and then they drop their price, and then they drop their price. So is it revenge of the shipper or the carriers feeding frenzy and cannibalizing themselves?
Well, it's like crabs.
I think you can look at it both ways, personally.
I think so. It's the crab in a bucket theory. So you get crabs trying to get out of a bucket, right? The problem is as soon as one crab reaches the top of the bucket, the other crab's pulling back down. Because they're crabs. So problem is with carriers, we're undercutting ourselves on rates. So when we talk a lot about relationship business, the strategy behind carriers' pricing decisions that they made in the past 2 years is going to dictate how much fun they're going to have now. Like we've heard anecdotally that some large carriers have either volunteered to take rate cuts in lieu of having your lanes rebid, or shippers have also reached out asking kind of under the table, hey, can you take a rate cut? And so it's a situation right now where large carriers that have large volumes and trailer pools, if you got like 1,000 trailers spread between your customers, you're going to insulate yourself a lot better, because not only if I pull out 50 trailers from your distribution center, I will purposefully take 3 weeks to do so out of pure spite. I used to be a load planner, folks. I will destroy your ability as a distribution center to move your equipment in and out. By accident, by the way, unfortunately, because sometimes you don't have enough capacity. You ever try getting in a market and moving 50 trailers out somewhere? You know how many drivers get pissed when you assign them an empty trailer non-revenue move?
Calm down. Let's get back.
Sorry, I'm flashbacking.
Let's get back on track here.
So anyways,
what about this though? Let's talk about this for a second, because this is really, really interesting. So we've talked about over the last couple, we went through the pandemic. I don't know if you guys realize this or remember what happened. So we went through this. So at that time, there was a lot of people that were opportunistic and just jacked those rates up and made all kinds of money, and threw this person into Greece and made money there, jumped out into the spot market, did all this other kind of stuff. We had fragmentation of the markets. We had capacity all over the place. Those that stuck to those relationships and helped those clients out during that, are they in a better negotiation now because they built those relationships or adopted that technology to be able to work on those relationships and be able to save themselves from maybe losing 5-6% on their contracts now?
Completely. When we talk about routing guides, customers are lazy. They'll maybe have 5 or 10. They'll have their incumbent carrier, and then they'll have 2 or 3 that they'll do with their tender stuff. So those carriers that have these relationships with the large volumes, if you do it right, like you said, you don't gouge, then you're in a spot where it's one of mutual respect. Market carriers, Chicago Shade, whatever you want to call them, they are the ones that basically are the price movers in the market, because brokerages usually will rely on them. They don't really have customers per se. They're just opportunistic actors. Those are the ones that are going to have the most problems, because you've behaved that way. And now strategically, how are you going to approach a customer when, your street cred amongst even all the brokers is like, this guy's going to charge me $500 more. So, most carriers should be fine. It's the carriers that have either made poor choices, poor pricing decisions, or soured their relationships with brokers because, as you've experienced, we all have that one carrier where they'll just keep asking. And even when the market is like, it's a $1,500 lane, they'll ask for $2,500 and then hang up on you. So those are the ones that are probably going to be in for a bad time. For everybody else, we're all adults here. We're professionals. We have conversations. If we need to go down 10%, we have salespeople to reach out. These are some of the processes. So like what Craig was touching on, the outlook is going to be something where we're going to see constriction. We're going to see.
Oh yeah, no, we certainly are. And he wasn't implying that all the shippers are ganging up at a back alley and ready to attack the carriers.
Not in the back alley.
Right, or in freight alley or whatever it happens to be. He's talking about that cycle. It comes.
We're going to be walking around
and how you react in this cycle is how they react towards you in the next cycle.
Yeah, exactly. Carriers have been around for 10 or 20 years. You establish relationships. You build up a street cred. You're seeing them every year for the RFP. How you act right now is going to completely dictate how it's going to be. It's like halftime right now, and let's hope that you played a really good first half.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk about average length of haul, as we call it in Sonar, a aloha. Right? I mean, that's the index, but the length of haul has been dropping, right?
For the past 10 years, yes. Yeah. Average length of haul total, the totality of all carriers on the ATRI, American Transportation Research Institute, has been going down. We just went below 80,000 miles. So to your average person, you say, why does that matter? Well, in trucking, the trinity is revenue per truck per week, revenue miles per truck per week, and then depending upon, I like deadhead percentage because that tells me how much I'm wasting.
Sure, yeah, how much non-revenue moves.
Non-rev pros and how those get put in.
Sure.
But the problem becomes that, with e-commerce trends and consumer buying behavior, customers don't like shipping things as far. You want to pay less. You want to ship closer to each other. Your network. Having 1,000-mile runs has now turned into 750. We saw the tweeners. I saw that with Team Freight Expedited. Now we're down to 500 miles. We're going down to 350.
Yeah, and tweeners suck. Nobody likes tweeners.
There's a challenge because as your revenue mile and length of haul, like an accordion, gets smaller, you have to have more loads per truck per week to bake up the difference because your unit of output generally in trucking, one of the big ones is revenue miles. McDonald's makes hamburgers over how many billion served. Trucking, the factory is the tractor, the output is the revenue miles driven. That's why rate per mile and everything else comes off of how many miles drove.
Yeah.
So there is a concern that as we saw tenders going down, as we see the OTVI move downwards, the concern is the truck companies will not be able to fill the bucket fast enough in that you're kind of at a more more exposed to these drastic changes. If you have a bunch of 1,000-mile runs, you only need X amount of loads per week. You cut that, let's say 2,000 miles per truck per week, 2 loads, 1,000 miles, down and back. Life is easy. They go down to 500 miles. I need 4 loads. I can only get 3. Now I'm at a problem because not only am I not insulated by length of haul strategically, but now I have to fill the bucket more, causing that cascading rate decreases as I solicit newer customers and undercut incumbents.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to what is your area of focus? What is your expertise? Are you a regional carrier? Are you not? Are you dedicated? Are you not? Are you more in spot? Or what it happens to be in your customer mix? You can control that by your go-to-market strategies.
Exactly.
For example, but is not this also this change of what I've been watching, and I've been watching the average length of haul for a while because I find it very, very interesting because it's an output of an equation that is changing as far as East Coast, West Coast input of imports, where those distributions are happening, the function of rail, urgency of the shipper or the consignee to get it to market changes the length of haul. Because you start using more rail, there's less long haul, therefore the ratio changes, right?
Yeah.
You start pumping stuff into the East Coast, the ratio changes because you're only going a few hundred miles to hit 75% of the population instead of across the country to hit 70, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot shorter to go from Elizabeth or Savannah to Columbus, Ohio, or Chattanooga, Tennessee than it is from LA. I don't know if you realize that. Even the flat earthers would agree with that, I would think, right? So, I mean, there's that impact as well, right?
Exactly. I mean, and that's something where geography and, like you said, population centers matter. If we see more intermodal going along the main lines, going to Dallas, Chicago, Atlanta, and other places like New Jersey, when they come out, like you said, they're bumping the dock shorter distances. Mm-hmm. Out west, on the other hand, length of haul still remains somewhat favorable because it's like,
There's longer distances between the population centers, right?
Yeah, they're spread so far out geographically, but at the same time, like the challenges in California with rates, it's not really going to save you as much because you're just spreading out this problem longer. So that's going to be a challenge for trucking companies utilizing trailer pools. And that the name of the game is, if length of haul gets shorter, you have to go fast. Like Top Gun, the need for speed. So utilizing power-only brokerages if you can't get access to trailer pools, utilizing trailer pools if you have them, getting into ways to speed it up. The days of live and 350 miles might as well just blow your day because you're waiting 4 hours from dock to dock, 2 hours a piece, and then you're just 350 miles. There's problems inherent with that. So operationally, trucking companies will have to make adjustments just because as length of haul decreases, it puts more pressure on the staff and pricing to fill that bucket.
It'll be interesting to watch these dynamics as we watch the directional flow of cargo into the United States and out of the United States in the population centers, but also the switch to alternative fuels, whether it be electricity or hydrogen or whatever. That infrastructure is also going to dictate, and the ability of those tractors to handle long distances and where they can recharge or refuel or whatever it happens to be is going to change those dynamics.
Well, the Sun Belt's going to get a lot more sunnier because you're going to have that selection of charging stations, and that's going to dictate as well where your savings are going to be because if you do the modified network, location matters.
Yeah, location. Thank you so much, Thomas.
Stay
we'll catch up with you a little bit
You can
later,
get the full Freewaves TV experience.
And I'll see you Friday night as well, right? Friday, 5 o'clock.
Yep, Sirius XM Radio filling in for Grace, channel 146 from 5 to 7 Eastern. Tune in. I promise it will be a fun time.
It will be. Be there or be square. And hey, we're going to jump to a quick break and then we'll be right back.